Alright mates, how's it going? In today's video, Chapter 8 of Illidan by William King. Here comes a buttload of exposition, so you might want to sit down or something. Let's go! Vandel was currently stood in a great courtyard in the ruins of Carabor, and he wasn't alone. There were hundreds of supplicants lining the terraces. Illidan had been gone for weeks, and nobody knew where the bloody hell he was. But in the meantime, Vandel and the other recruits had spent long days training under the guidance of the weird tattooed demonic elf-looking peeps. Varidith, the master tutor, had been lecturing them on the nature of demons. He was a bit arrogant. However, there were rumours that he'd once infiltrated the Shadow Council and stolen their book of fell names, so that's kinda cool. Another one, Alandian, laid out tactics of infiltration. She claimed to have been trained directly by Illidan himself, and Netherel, the oldest amongst them, was the one who taught the recruits about weapons, and despite his age, he was pretty good with weapons. So mostly, Vandel had spent his time practicing with weapons, sparring with fellow recruits, and getting to know everyone a little bit better. He and Raphael had stuck together like butter and cheese since they'd met. Out of everyone here, Raphael definitely seemed like he was the most normal. Vandel had also learned that a large majority of the recruits were blood elves, sent by Kel'Thas to learn how to fight demons. There were far fewer night elves, but amongst those few night elves was a guy called Celadon. Now, the book says he came all the way from Eversong Woods, which is a weird place for a night elf to come from, but okay. His body had been burned by several punches from an infernal, and the whole right side of his face had been caved in. He shouldn't have been able to move from the pain, but somehow he could. Another night elf, Isteth, had lost all 3 of her children to the Legion. She carried the burned corpse of her youngest in a pouch against her chest, like some kind of psycho kangaroo. There were nights when she wouldn't stop screaming, and when one of the Blood Elf recruits tried to silence her forcibly, it didn't end well for them, because she stabbed them right in the face. Mavalith just smiled a lot. He seemed to find everything hilarious. It was actually quite disconcerting, some of the things he laughed at. Something in his eyes suggested he took pleasure from the pain of others. And then there was Siana. She seemed normal at first, but she was possibly more obsessed with vengeance than any of the rest of them combined. It wasn't even clear what the demons had done to her, but she thirsted for revenge with every fibre of her being. In terms of the Blood Elves, Raphael had suggested they were not to be trusted, twisted by addiction to arcane magic. But Vandel didn't give a shit. Too much had happened and too much had changed to really get sucked into all of that racist bollocks. All he knew was that every elf here had suffered at the hands of the Burning Legion, and that made them all brothers and sisters and stuff to him. But it was clear that he and his brothers and sisters and stuff were not the first to walk this path. There were the demonic tattooed weirdos with altered eyes, for example. It was strange. The servants and soldiers around the Black Temple seemed scared of them, and yet all of the recruits looked at them with awe and envy. They were cloaked in mystery, but one thing was certain. These tattooed fighters had killed demons. Now there were times when Vandel sensed the presence of the Burning Legion, not just in the region, but right here in the Black Temple. He'd tell himself it was because the temple housed Illidan's bound servants, but sometimes it felt like they were literally breathing down his neck. And yet when he'd turn around, he'd just see Needle or Elorisiel, but that was probably nothing to worry about. Vandel then realised that Raphael had been shaking his shoulder for quite a while, and when he turned to look, he saw that his companion was pointing at something. Illidan had arrived.
And now, we begin.
Begin what? Was Illidan finally going to share his dark knowledge? Were they finally going to learn how to kill demons rather than just spar with each other and listen to lectures?
Take a look around you. There are more than 500 of you here. By the time this is over, there will be less than 100.
Haha! Bloody Mavalith. Always laughing at inappropriate times.
You all swore you were willing to give your lives to strike at the Burning Legion. You now have a chance to prove that. Who here will be the first?
Unsurprisingly, no one moved. Everybody just kind of looked at each other. But Vandel then took a deep breath and stepped forward. I will have my vengeance or I will die. Whatever is needed, I will do.
Very well. Step into the summoning circle.
So Vandel went ahead and did that. He passed into a vast pentacle, surrounded by glowing runes. And as they began to pulse, his skin tingled, and his mouth felt dry. Illidan then spoke a word of power, causing fell energy to surge, and then suddenly, a fellhound appeared, out of nowhere. And what was really weird was that it bore a startling resemblance to the one that had killed Vandel's son. The fellhound then shrieked and pounced towards Vandel, so he drew his runic daggers and leapt to meet it, full of rage and full of beans. He got a few stabs in, but the fellhound got a few bites in, and they burned. As Vandel stumbled back, he came to the realization that he couldn't actually leave the circle he was in. Magic was imprisoning him inside, so he really only had one choice: keep fighting. He leapt towards the beast once again, waited for it to open its jaws wide, and then plunged his dagger up through the roof of its mouth, into the place where its brain should be. And the creature keeled over, and then kind of spazzed out on the ground. Illidan walked into the circle, reached down and pulled the fellhound's still beating heart right out of its chest.
Eat it.
Beg your pardon?
Eat it.
Vandel then glanced around and saw that all eyes were very much on him, and something in the betrayer's stance told him that defiance was not an option. So he took the heart in both hands, raised it to his lips, licked it a little bit, and then bit into the meat and forced himself to chew. It was tough, and quite spicy, and it tried to come back up a few times as he swallowed it. Illidan then pointed at the blood pooling around the now dead fellhound.
Drink it.
Ah, for fuck's sake. Vandel bent down and scooped up some blood in his cupped hands. He was really starting to feel quite sick, but he managed to gulp down the foul liquid, and to his horror, he felt as if something was kicking inside his belly. Had this disgusting meal made him pregnant? He didn't sign up for that. The betrayer then started chanting, and floaty green balls appeared, and bolts of magical energy then speared into Vandel from the balls, and it hurt a lot. Vandel now felt like his entire body was on fire. The pain was so intense that he collapsed to the ground. He was pretty sure that Illidan was trying to kill him, and when he looked up at the betrayer, he could see that the guy had transformed. No longer did he look even remotely like a night elf. He looked 100% demon. Vandel then suddenly felt real angry. He wanted to reach up towards Illidan and choke the life from him, but he couldn't move. His body was not responding. However, his senses seemed to be picking up on all sorts of new invisible things. He could almost see the words that Illidan was chanting, and he could feel the flow of magical energy within the stones of the Black Temple. And then he passed out. And we're leaving it there! Well, that sounds fun, doesn't it? I'm sure we'd all love to experience something like that. We'll be staying with Vandel in the next chapter, but I think I'm going to take Friday off for real life reasons. But then I'll be back on Tuesday, which is my birthday. So, there you go. As usual, link in the description if you're interested in buying this book. Also, there's links to my Discord server and my Patreon page too. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!